All right, so I got asked to do a couple examples on solving equations, a review of solving two-step equations. Specifically, again, I'm looking at the packet, the Wednesday's assignment, looking at a few from here. And specifically, I'm going to work out number 67 and 73. Okay, those are ones that I'll go through. And so looking at 67, so number 67, 4 plus 3r equals negative 8. So again, remember the review of equations is all this is asking is what value, right? R is my variable, and it's an equation that says this needs to be true in order for it to be true, what number can R or should R be? What number should R be in order for this to be true, right? So with looking at this, I know that it's possible to possibly even just start playing around and do something like a guess and check, where you can just start throwing numbers into the R to determine what would make it true, right? So for example, if I was using the guess and check method, the guess and check says you would guess a number. So I'm going to guess a number for R, and then I'm going to work it out to see what I get, right? So if I have the equation or the expression 4 plus 3r equals negative 8, so I'm going to put in an r value and see if it comes to be a true statement. For example, if I wanted to say, I think r is 2. So if I guess that r is 2, then I'm saying 4 plus 3, and then this is where the 2 comes in, right? 3 times 2, does that equal negative 8? That's that whole guess and check method. And we would work this out. Well, multiply first. So we get 6. 3 times 2 is 6. So 4 plus 6. 4 plus 6 is 10. Does 10 equal negative 8? And it does not. So that was our guess. So it doesn't check out. So we could do another guess. Maybe this time I say, what about negative 3? I'm going to try that. And if I try negative 3, it's 4 plus 3 times, and instead of the r, I'm putting in negative 3. And I'm going to multiply that by, or I'm going to see if that does equal negative 8. So that's this whole guess and check method. And if I'm working that one out, I get 4 plus negative 9. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Well, 4 plus negative 9 is negative 5. So does negative 5 equal negative 8? And it doesn't. So that's not the answer either. So this is that guess and check method, which maybe you've learned before in a different class. But there's another way of coming up with the answer, and that's solving the equation, going through the steps of solving. Guess and check is a good method, but sometimes it's not always as efficient. So how do I solve? The key with solving this is what I tend to look as when I look at an equation, I look at it as this is it has to be a balanced, right? And it's a balance. What's the same over here is the same over here. That's what we want. So I tend to draw a little line down the way, so I know I've got two sides of this equation, and everything I do to one side, I have to do the other to keep it balanced. So the goal is to get that r all by itself. You want to get r isolated, isolate r. That's what we're looking for. So if I look at my operations, I need to start eliminate these numbers, and I always eliminate anything that's added or subtracted first. So in this case, that 4 is added, so I'm going to eliminate the 4 first because I get rid of adding and subtracting first. It's almost the opposite of PEMDAS. So we do get rid of the 4, but I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So if I show what I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So if I subtract 4 from both sides, that takes and eliminates that 4 on this side, and all I'm left with here is a positive 3 times r, and then the equal sign continues down the line. Negative 8, negative 4, give me negative 12. So now I have a more simplified equation that is 3r equals negative 12. At that point, you might be able to already guess, using a better guess and check method, what the answer might be. Because what we're asking is, what are we asking? 3, we're asking 3 times something is negative 12. But if we're going to go to the follow the steps, the steps would be at this point the opposite operation to get rid of that 3. The 3 is being multiplied, so the opposite operation would be to divide, and we divide both sides by 3. Because what you do to one side, you've got to do the other. That now gets my r by itself, right? 3 divided by 3 is 1, and it's 1r is all that's left over. And then we have negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. So my answer is r equals negative 4. So if we were to check that, right, the whole check process down here on my guess and check table, if I would have put a negative 4 into r and do the math on this equation, I would say 4 plus 3 times, and again, I guessed negative 4, and then does all of that equal negative 8? Well, let's look at it. So 4 plus 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. 4 plus negative 12 is negative 8, so it checks out. So that's the whole check part. Oops. There we go. It checks out. So when you have that 4 and negative 12, you get negative 8, and negative 8 does equal negative 8. So that is the answer. The answer is negative 4. Okay, so that's number 67. I also got asked about 73, so I'm going to look at number 73. So 73 says negative 18 minus 3/4 v equals 3. So I'm looking again. I want to isolate the v. I'm not going to do a guess and check table this time. I'm just going to use the process of solving equations and show you again how to do that. So we're looking at, I'm wanting my v by itself. That's the goal. So the first thing I need to do is I need to get rid of whatever's being added or subtracted to the expression with v, right? So right here, it's this negative 18 is being subtracted. But this is the tricky piece. If I look at this negative 18 minus 3/4, I want to point something out. This means negative 18 plus negative 3/4 v equals 3. So when you have a minus, it's the same thing as plus a negative. It's the same thing as adding a negative, right? So I want to make sure you see that because I'm looking to get rid of this 18. How do I make that 18 become a 0? If I subtract 18, if that's what I were to do, if I subtract 18, well, negative 18 minus 18 doesn't equal 0. So I've got to do the opposite. I've got to add 18 to make that a 0. The goal is that whole thing becomes 0. In order for me then to have just left over here is negative 3/4 v, right? That's what's left over. I want to eliminate that negative 18. But remember, it's a balance, right? This red line here says my equation has to be balanced. So what I did over here, I have to do over here. So I'm also going to add 18 to both sides here. And so 3 plus 18 is equal to 21. Now I have negative 3/4 v equals 21. Now this one's interesting. What's the 3/4 doing to the v? It's being multiplied, right? So in order to eliminate something that's being multiplied, what do? We divide it out. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. What am I dividing out? I'm dividing a negative 3/4. Negative 3/4 divided by negative 3/4, all of that becomes 1. All of that becomes 1. It cancels out, and all I'm left with is v. So I want to do the same thing over here. I want, and I need to, because it's a balanced equation, divide by negative 3/4. Now, this is where you got to remember, how do you divide by a fraction? So over here, I'm just going to show the process. That means what? It means 21. When you divide by a fraction, you actually multiply by the reciprocal. Do you remember that? Dividing by a fraction is multiplying by the reciprocal. It's taking the fraction, flipping it around, and doing multiplication instead. And keep in mind, it's still negative. So when we do the multiplication here, we're saying 21 times negative 3/4. Okay, so what does that mean? put that too soon. So what does that mean? I'm just going to keep working it down. So this is 21. And what we do is when we multiply fractions, right, we take the whole number, make it into a fraction by putting it over 1, multiplying it by now. I'm going to say 4/3, and it's a negative 4/3. So my answer we know is going to be negative because it's a positive multiplied by a negative. It's going to be a negative. Negative what? Well, this is where with multiplication, you can multiply straight across, then simplify, or you can cross reduce or cross simplify if you want. I just like to just go ahead and multiply straight across. So I have a negative 84 divided by 3. And when I do that division, negative 84 divided by 3, I get 28. Yes. So I have a negative, oops, off the screen there, negative 28. So there's my final answer. V equals negative 28. All right, guys. Thanks.